Moving to this, over 30 initiates have lost their lives in the Eastern Cape since the start of the summer season. Concerns have been raised that some of the deaths are as a result of a crime at initiation schools. The Congress of Traditional Leaders of South Africa's Secretary General, Zolani Mkiva, joins us now for more. Mr. Mkiva, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. So the recent deaths of 34 initiates in the 2023 summer initiation season have led to the national government to consider a year-round planning approach. As Contralesa Secretary General, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of this shift in addressing these initiation challenges?
No, thank you very much, and good evening to you, and good evening to the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Let me start off by saying that we should be the first ones, as the Congress of Traditional Leaders, to say that the amount of children or the number of children that we have lost thus far calls upon us to actually make a declaration to the nation that this is now a disaster. And year on year, we lose children in great numbers. From 1994 to date, we have almost lost more than 500 kids. So to lose 30 plus in just one season is a number too much to comprehend with. And for us as Contralesa, it's no longer just an issue of concern. As I say, it is now a disaster, and we need to act swiftly to ensure that we come up with a turnaround strategy on this. And of course, it is true, the clarion call that we have been making, that the government agrees with us that a long-term view in terms of planning, including annual plans, amongst other things, is what we have been calling for. To be precise, we are calling for the institutionalization of the initiation season. That includes the plan, that includes budgeting, that includes cooperative approach where all the critical stakeholders put their hands on the deck and support the institution that has a responsibility of custodianship around this very important national ritual of the rites of passage from boyhood to manhood.
You aptly describe this as a disaster, but also to add a layer, it's also prompted concerns about what are termed avoidable fatalities. As the Secretary General of Contralesa, how does the organization then plan to collaborate with the government for this year-round planning, also ensuring the safety and well-being of these initiates?
Well, our view is that if we plan all the ABCs, that is from preliminary arrangements that need to be made, including registration of all the boys that will be going through the rites of passage in a particular year. This is something that needs to be detected in advance, and it must be part of that planning because each family knows year or two ahead that their boy will be going through the initiation. So the registration should actually start in a year before the actual year of checking in the children. I'm just making an example with that if we plan ahead, we are able to alleviate the criminality which is being conducted by those who want to make money out of the ritual. Because when you don't have a plan, you leave a huge gap amongst chance takers and the bogus initiation sessions to use that gap and exploit it so that they can continue with their nefarious practices of setting up bogus initiation schools. So we want to work with government, particularly the key departments which should be involved. One, it is the Department of Traditional Affairs. Two, it is the Department of Health. Three, it is the Department of Police. Because those three are very key in ensuring that all what needs to happen does happen. Number four, we want a critical empowerment of the traditional councils to have an authority of actually issuance of all the clearance certificates for the children that go through the practice. It's of no use for us not to have a paper trail and a paperwork that is linked to that. Tradition and modernity are two sides of the same coin. Whilst we maintain our tradition, it is very important that when we talk about institutionalization, that includes professionalizing what we are actually practicing, so that we ensure that we keep the record. We know which boys are where, under whose stewardship as a traditional surgeon. We need to have a requisite record of each and every initiation school. And number 5, the government must then come to the party to make sure that the poor families, people who cannot afford certain amenities in terms of checking in their children, that is actually budgeted for. And we are saying this institutionalization means formalization, because initiation seasons must be handled as a heritage school of preparing future leaders of the families, of the communities, and of the society at large. And unless we do that and we take this so serious, because it is an institution that produces men and leaders of the future, and therefore it can't be handled on ad hoc basis. It has to be processed through a formal arrangement and through institutionalized arrangement. And it is not a matter that must be government-driven. It must actually be driven by the institution of traditional leadership, but government must bring in critical support to the institution of traditional leadership, so that all the tools of trade that are required and all the necessary resources that are needed are actually put in place, and it must be something that actually comes from the division of the revenue, so that we know how much is set aside for initiation. You know, I'm saying this because the initiation season in South Africa happens in June and December, or rather in winter and summer, if you put it differently.
Yeah.
If you look at the whole value chain of the expense that goes there, it actually plays a critical mass, and it makes a huge contribution in the gross domestic product of the country. And therefore, you can't take a matter that plays such a critical role in the life cycle of a country on an annual basis, and you treat it as a by the way. The President of the Republic, at all material times, needs to assist the institution of traditional leadership by ensuring that the seasons are actually declared as a period which must be observed by everybody in respect of this national ritual. You know what I mean? And in that way, it works in a direction of decolonizing the landscape and mainstreaming the importance of the culture of a people which predates the colonial order, and including the apartheid.
Mr. Mkiva, we've also been, allegations have also been brought to our attention about these practices or worrying practices that have also emerged from some of these initiation schools, such as the abuse of alcohol, the abuse of drugs, and also women being brought to some of these initiation schools. Are you aware of such allegations? And if so, what's Contralesa's response to this?
We condemn these acts which are very demonic and diabolic, because they now begin to contaminate the good name of initiation, let alone the issue that people will go in the initiation school and shoot at children point blank. These are some of the things that are happening, and we are aware that in these bogus initiation schools, in the majority of cases, we are told that the things that you are mentioning are happening: alcohol abuse, the abuse of dacha, the abuse of other drugs which are detrimental to the lives of the children, and also the torture of the children, physical torture where they are actually tormented, beaten, sometimes beaten to death. We are aware of those things which lead to a variety of fatalities, including death, including amputations, and we condemn this, and we are saying, in the context of institutionalization that we are calling for, and the positive response that the government now agrees with us, that a long-term view and a long-term planning annually must be happening. We think that we'll be able to turn the corner.
Mr. Mkiva, very quickly before we let you go, you touched on the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Ministry. I want to take a quotation from the Deputy Minister, that's Prince Zolile Burns-Ncamashi, who calls for a pragmatic approach to initiation deaths. But what specific initiatives does Contralesa propose to address the root causes, including dehydration, blood poisoning, as well as chronic medication issues?
We are very clear. The pragmatic approach to issues includes that we are saying that the management of the initiation schools, beyond the role that is played by traditional surgeons, must include the involvement of medically trained doctors, but doctors who themselves have gone through the tradition of the initiation rites. We don't want to bring in medical trained officers who have not gone through the ritual. So it goes without saying that, as I indicated, modernity goes with tradition, because the safety of the children is key in order to mitigate the risks that may occur, whether a child could have a sickness whilst there. So when you have doctors on call who have gone through the ritual themselves, they will come in very handy. But also, the management of the school must include, amongst others, their presence, or even nurses that have gone through that training, male nurses who have gone through the ritual. We are emphasizing that point because we don't want a situation where our tradition is depleted or simply assimilated and absorbed through Western ways of doing things. But instead, we want to tap into the Western knowledge on how medicine of the West can assist us where there are gaps, to fill that gap. That is very practical. And I'm making a practical example that in some areas, what I'm talking about is actually happening. But we must encourage it, and we must destigmatize it, the bringing in of these doctors, because so long as they have gone through the traditional practice themselves.
As we conclude this insightful discussion with Secretary General Zolani Mkiva of Contralesa, the unfolding challenges surrounding initiation deaths in South Africa's recent season shed light on a comprehensive and longer planning approach. More than 30 young men losing their lives at these initiation schools in the Eastern Cape. He's the Secretary General of Contralesa.